Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cosmic Force. Tonight, we talk War of the Bounty Hunter release, and we do a deep dive into the man himself, Darth Vader, and his long history in comics. But first, let me go around the room and let me introduce all of my hosts with me tonight. And I will start where I always do with Emma. Emma, how are we doing tonight?
And I am doing so good. Where are the bounty hunters? Am I right, guys? Like, I'm not gonna spoil anything right here, but what a way to wake up this morning. And I forgot to rate it on Goodreads this morning, but I'm gonna tell you my rating right now. It's 5 stars.
That this might be the most active we've had it both Slack and Discord since Darth Vader issue 5 last year with
for sure.
Handmaids. So yes, very, very exciting. We will be talking about that soon, but let me get over to our next host, our host that was just recently visiting Batu. Caleb, how was your visit? Glad to see you have returned safely to this galaxy.
Exactly. I'm glad to be back. I'm kind of starting my my dark arc here, as you can see. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk about Vader. Had a great time visiting the galaxy far, far away. It was a lot of fun. Whenever you get a chance, you should definitely go, but make sure you make your reservations like 3 months in advance. It's pretty brutal to get into the things you want to do. So my advice to you.
So I'm going to ask you real quick, what was your job on Smuggler's Run?
I was the left-right pilot, the one on the left, and it was a lot of fun. Smuggler's Run was definitely the highlight of that whole arc and that whole trip. 10 out of 10. Like, there's something so magical if you've never done it. You're essentially in the pilot seat of the Millennium Falcon, and there's a moment where it lights up and it says, okay, activate the hyperdrive, and you see the lever that they always press, and you have to reach out, grab it, and pull it down. And it's like, at that moment, it doesn't matter where you are in the fandom. You are an absolute Star Wars fan at that point. Once you
are giving me goosebumps just listening to that. That's how awesome that moment is.
It's great. It's great.
All right. And our last host tonight, our producer, our newly engaged host, Jacob. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a very busy weekend. I went home for the first time in a year and a half now, and was there for 5 days, and it felt like 5 weeks. I mean, engagement part was very fun, but when you haven't seen all your family in that long, it's it can be a lot. So yeah, it's been fun. Before the show, on a completely different tangent, we were talking about Star Tours and like the parks in general, and I pulled out my old Star Tours pass, this little like merchandise thing with my name on it that we determined is, I think, probably older than Emma, if not as old as Emma, which makes me feel ancient. But yeah, so it's been a fun little week. Not surprising, I did not read a whole lot of comic books this last week, but we'll get into that pretty soon.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a busy week. Yeah, we're going to get to that in just a minute. But first, before we do that, I want to welcome all of you in the chat joining us tonight. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. We are a Star Wars comics podcast that broadcasts live right here on youtube.com/Youtini every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. If you can't join us live, that's perfectly fine. We have our videos are up on the channel almost as soon as we get done, and we're on all of your favorite podcast platforms, so you can always check us out. Check out the audio version of the podcast. We also have a Discord that you can find at Youtini.com, or excuse me. Why do I always get to youtini.com/Discord? I always get this messed up. Where we have more than 1,000 members with dozens of channels. The comics channel has been very busy tonight, not talking about War of the Bounty Hunters, but talking about Gracchus and all of the technology that he uses to make his love happen faster. If you want to be a part of those sorts of discussions, join us in the Discord and join over 1,000 other positive-minded Star Wars fans. And if you like what you see and you want to participate, or you want to say thank you, you can head over to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Youtini, where for as little as $5 a month, you can gain exclusive access to the entire Youtini podcast network, as well as exclusive merch and community involvement things. So tonight, we're going to get to the main course of the show we're going to be talking about Darth Vader himself. Has the villain become sort of an anti-hero of late? But before we do that, let's get into our weekly pull list. And boy, do we have a big one, Jacob. What is on tap for everybody this week?
There is one singular comic book out today, but don't worry, there might not be many, but it's very important you read this comic book. It is War of the Bounty Hunters #1 Most Wanted, written by Charles Soule. Pencils by Luke Ross, colors by Niraj Menon, inks from Rochelle Rosenberg, and cover by Steve McNiven and Frank D'Armata, with letters by Travis Lanham. Yeah, with, as B Nasty says, with 1,000 covers. I think the actual number was like around 40 different covers for War of the Bounty Hunters. So I don't know which one you got, but congratulations if you spent a lot of money on a variance like we all did.
Mike should know. If Mike was in the chat, he'd be telling us exactly how many variant covers there are.
Right. So yeah, the link for that, the Comixology link, is in the YouTube description right now if you want to pick that up for yourself. But yeah, very, very important comic book. We're not going to spoil it tonight, obviously, but I would read this definitely sooner rather than later. And surprisingly enough, I saw Kelly Knox on Twitter's like, I haven't seen anyone spoil this yet. Like,
I haven't either.
I'm so used to like Disney Plus shows.
Good job to the community.
Yeah, I'm so used to like the Disney Plus shows and being like 9 a.m. Eastern time Friday, being like, yo, did you really love that moment from the show? That I was like, I haven't had a chance to watch it. It's like, I don't want to be up at 3 a.m. and I have a job. But yeah, like, no, surprisingly enough, no spoilers. But I would definitely read this before it gets spoiled for you, because it's gonna be everywhere, I would say, within the next 2 or 3 days.
For sure. Like, and I'm so impressed with the Star Wars community for not spoiling it, but also our Discord community as a whole. Like, literally everybody was so good with spoiler tags. We didn't have to correct anybody or remind anybody to use spoiler tags. Everybody was so good about it. So thank you guys. It made it a very fun experience to hang out there and chat all about it.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a discussion even on like our internal Slack channel about amount of comic news as much as this one. Everyone on the whole team, not just the 4 of us, but throughout the whole Youtini, is like, oh wow, this is gonna be something special.
Yeah, it was cool.
And
just
it was
like
really
watching
great.
Yeah,
to watch it roll in over the course of the day. I mean, you had Jacob, I think you, me, and Eric were in there like right from the beginning of the day. And then more and more comments just kept happening in that thread.
And yeah, and the cool part was it wasn't even team members that normally read comic books where it's like, hey, everyone, like, you need to read this. Like, I don't care if you're a big comics fan, go read. And that's something we're actually going to talk about, how to quickly get into this if you're not all caught up. But yeah, just like go read the alpha, go read this, and it's well worth your time. And seeing all the people that normally just do novels come in and react to this was so fun. So yeah, that's something we want to talk about, was the easy way to read this. And look, there's a lot of stuff. If you want to read it all, here's every book there is. It's a lot. You don't have to do that though. And what?
Yeah, this is the completionist's list right here. It's got all of the preludes. It's got all of the one-offs. It's got the main titles, or excuse me, it's got the main War of the Bounty Hunter storyline. This is what the omnibus is ultimately going to include.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we have these great series pages, which I honestly kind of forgot about on the Youtini website. We have one for the War of the Bounty Hunters crossover event, and it shows well, it doesn't have every cover because not every cover has been announced yet, but all the covers that we know of in the series. Here up in this top left with Boba Fett, you got the Alpha. That is definitely I honestly think if you didn't want to, you could even get away without reading this, because they kind of set up the premise in the issue number 1, but I think it's worth your time. And then you can honestly skip all the preludes and just hop in with the War of the Bounty Hunters number 1 if that's what you want.
Yeah.
It's like the High Republic. You can read all the adult novels and have a complete story, or you can read every insider edition or insider short story and comic book and novel and middle age novel, and you're gonna have a great time, but you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, and I like that comparison to the High Republic, because it's very apt. Like, with the High Republic, if you read like Light of the Jedi and then you read Rising Storm, like you're gonna get the meat of the story. And if you read just War of the Bounty Hunters, the Alpha, and 1 through I think 5 maybe, you're gonna get a really awesome story just in itself. But if you like that extra stuff, reading the preludes and all the tie-ins really, really makes it feel more alive even.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and
I think this is
we're a comics podcast, so we're obviously going to encourage you to read comics, but I do want to take a 1 minute to really be serious about what happened in this comic. If you read the books, if you enjoy the greater Star Wars universe, I highly encourage you to at least pick this issue up. We're not going to spoil it tonight, but there is some EU changing events. I don't think I'm being too much of a hype person when I say that there are some EU changing events that have occurred in this issue, that if you like the way that the rest of the EU has expanded, that you are going to want to pick this up, because this is going to be a real moment in time that is really going to change things moving forward.
Yeah, I think this is probably the biggest must-read comic book since maybe Rise of Kylo Ren. As far as trying to expand the story, obviously we're going to tell you to read Dark Lord of the Sith. We'll tell you to read all these other great books, but for something I think that's quintessential and really important to the overall story of Star Wars, I think this is shaping up to be that.
Yes, I think this is going to be the biggest crossover event of Star Wars history. So it'll be very tough to top what they're going for with this one.
Yeah, for sure. Tyler's not leading you down a wrong path. He's not trying to hype it up just for the sake of hyping it up. All of that is 100% true. And I think once you read it, you just have this feeling this is huge. This is galaxy changing, and it's just huge. I don't even know how to describe it. Honestly, it's just so exciting. I hope that you can hear in our voices how happy we are with what happened, and just how exciting it is. It's just pure joy from reading it, for sure.
Yes, and I think our last word is, when you do get around to reading it, be as kind as the rest of the community has been, and make sure you tag it. If you come to our Discord and you about it, make sure you tag it. Make sure that you are nice to everybody and let everybody really experience this moment, because it's a really cool moment. But that's all we're going to talk about it for this week. I'm sure there will be more to come in the weeks in the future. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to switch over now to what we are loving this week. And my pick of the week for my art of the week actually is from, very fittingly, Darth Vader #1. This is the 2015 edition. Art by Salvador Larroca. The colorist was Edgar Delgado, and of course, this is the version that was written by Karen Gillian. I just loved this. I love the ships of Star Wars, and to see, and what I really enjoy about the comics is being able to see them in situations where you don't normally see them. You can't get a still shot like this in a movie. Or a TV show, and so just see Vader's TIE Advance coming through a cloud it was just a really awesome moment, and Vader's just such a cool character, and we're going to get into that towards as we get into the main show. Yeah, great piece of art. So Emma, what do you have for us this week?
Yeah, so my art is from the Age of Rebellion Grand Moff Tarkin, #1, titled Tooth and Claw. It's kind of a mouthful, with art by Mark Lamming. And honestly, I'm not a huge Tarkin fan. I didn't really like his book. I didn't really like his attitude in episode 4. However, this issue kind of made me like him more, and it made me see him like, okay, this dude can throw a punch. Like, wow, he can really get like down and dirty when it comes to sort of inspiring his people, I suppose. And I mean, in this art right here, he looks so like athletic and buff. And when I think of Tarkin, I don't think of him like that. But yeah, he can throw a mean right hook. So,
or as they call it in the comics, a mean Leia.
yeah. He does a pretty good Leia, that's for sure. So yeah, that's my art of the week. Caleb, what is your art of the week?
What is my art of the week? Oh yes, I was reading. This one comes from Shadows of the Empire. I think this is from issue 1. Normally I go for like really fun like page layouts and different generations. I don't know, just something about this one really stuck out to me. This is the Slave One, Boba Fett's epic ship. I just love the weird angle on it. I love the detailing of it. I see some right above Tatooine. Just anytime you can get some really nice technical detail on a cool thing like the ship of Slave One, I always really that really just stuck out to me. So this is I don't know, just watching Slave One operate. It's the one Lego set I think I always really wanted. I have Jango Fett's version of Slave One, but I haven't ever gotten Boba Fett's version. So maybe one of these years. Yep. Jacob, what about you? What have you been watching?
Yeah, so this is from the Boba Fett Age of Rebellion issue. And I don't know, I guess also fitting because War of the Bounty Hunters this week, but really cool just story of him in Tatooine, kind of like serving justice, I suppose. And yeah, I don't know, just a really cool panel. Looks great. A great action shot of him coming down on this. I think it was another bounty hunter, I believe. Some criminal or mischievant or something like that, but looked cool.
Yeah, I swear,
yeah.
I think Boba Fett kills more fellow bounty hunters than he does actual bounties.
I mean, that's probably true. Well, I mean, if he gets paid extra for his bounties being alive, then makes sense.
Exactly. And then we have now the community art of the week, right? And this one comes from our very own Blind Fates. I don't think he's in the chat today, but this comes from the original Star Wars run, issue number 49. And kind of similar to mine, it's just a really fun shot of a Y-wing, and it really has that old like late 70s, early 80s sort of art style with like these sharp, vibrant colors and like these weird detailing and aesthetics. I don't know, and just the font of The Last Jedi there at the bottom. It's such a wild sort of Space Arabian Nights sort of thing going. It was just a really fun shot, and we went back and forth a little bit, but I think we decided on this one just because of how different and wild it looks. So thank you, Blind Fates. Reach out to us and we'll get you that comics code. And if you want to be featured on next week's episode, be sure to hit us up on our Discord, on our Twitter, or just directly tweet at us on any of our personal handles, and we'll do our best to get you featured.
Yeah, I love that art right there. We never really get anything from the much older comics. It's usually recent canon stuff or kind of later legend stuff. So it was really cool to see that submission. Thank you, Blind Fates.
Yeah, that's what won it over for me too. Was I think he called out the heavy metal text of The Last Jedi. Yeah, that was a great submission. Really, really appreciate the deep dive into the vault there. So now we're going to talk about what we're reading, and I think that everybody is. This is probably going to be a short segment because I think we're all reading the same thing, and that's for the Bounty Hunters. I mean, I've got my versions here. I've got all three of my variant covers. I've got the main one there. And then, of course, I've got one of the alternate variants there. And then my favorite, because June is Pride Month, we've got our girl, Dr. Afra, right there on the cover as well there. So make sure you pick yours up. We can't speak enough as to how awesome that book is. And that's pretty much all I've been reading from a comics perspective. I've been reading a couple of novels, finishing a couple of novels, and doing some research on some future content. But that's it for me on reading. Emma, what are you reading other than War of the Bounty Hunters?
I can't believe you just showed us the wraparound cover and only showed the front, first of all.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So we'll do that. I'll show the full cover there.
Oh wow!
There it is.
Yeah. It's got. I apologize for not giving you the full that full look there.
Even though it's half of it was missing, I feel like we were missing 75% of that whole artwork.
Yeah, like a majority of the story that whole art piece was telling. Yeah. So I have been reading Shadows of the Empire for an upcoming crossover that we talked about last time. I've read major crossover. So I've read both the comics arcs, I guess, and I've also started the book. I'm about 55 pages or so into that. It's an interesting experience, and I won't share any of my thoughts on it until the crossover. And of course, I read War of the Bounty Hunters. That goes without saying. So yeah, that's what I've been reading this week. Caleb, how about you?
I've been gearing up for this episode. So of course, War of the Bounty Hunters, just to keep that trend alive. But I've also been going back through some miscellaneous Vader series, like Vader's Quest from '99, and the more recent Dark Visions. Just a lot of little miscellaneous things to whet my appetite for tonight's episode and make sure I got all my talking points in order. So nothing too crazy there. Just keeping my feet wet, as it were. Jacob, what about you?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I did very little reading this week. When I went home, I brought Alphabet Squadron, which I had started back in February, and I felt ambitious, so I also brought Shadowfall, and I then proceeded to read a single chapter of Alphabet Squadron. So I definitely did not need to pack both those books. But I finally caught up with the Insider short stories. I hadn't read either of Cavan Scott's past two stories, so I caught up on those. So I'm now back to having read every piece of released High Republic content so far. So trying to keep on top of that. And speaking of High Republic, I did finally get my Mike Mayhew number 5 variant with Stell and Geos. I thought it looked great. This is my first Mayhew variant, so I was excited to pick that up as well.
Man, that is so... Oh my god, it's gorgeous.
And I thought I was done picking up variants, but then I just bought another one today. So
we always say we're done collecting things, and then that's never true. I could say that I'm done buying Funkos or I'm done buying Black Series. That'll never happen. It just won't. So stop telling yourself that.
Yeah, Emma, the Black Series is on you this time because I had said no to Rex, and then you went ahead and told everybody, hey, by the way, this Rex is really popular. You should pick it up.
You're welcome.
Okay.
I like to enable, doing my part.
We are a community of enablers. If we are nothing else, in the Youtini. So all right, we are going to take a quick break to take a look at our
Speaking
awesome
of it.
merch, and then we are going to come back and talk Darth Vader. So we'll be right back.
Hello. Okay, so this week we're going to be doing a deep dive on everyone's favorite Imperial, not Moff Tarkin apparently, but Darth Vader. So, Darth Vader has had a very long and interesting kind of arc throughout comics. Not only is he, the media of film's greatest villain, and that transfers over to the comics whenever he appeared in the early ones. But recently we've gotten a lot of really good, like, Vader specific issues. So we want to take some time to talk about that, kind of do some deep dives, have a real fun discussion about all that sort of thing. So let's kind of start with a grand, like, big picture here of why is Vader in comics? Is he good enough to be a real protagonist? I mean, he's such a wrecking ball. Why bother making features, about Vader? What about you, crew? Why do you think Vader should be a star of comics?
I guess
Well, I mean, I,
go ahead.
okay, yeah. So for me, when I was thinking about this question, it all comes down to what do we have time to see of him in the movies in terms of his inner emotions, his inner struggles. We never get to see any of that in the films or even in any TV shows that he appears in. And the comics are the perfect place to do that. And somehow, even though comics is a very visual medium, it's like, and Vader has no facial expressions, obviously, yet you can still very much gather what Vader is feeling and thinking and going through. And he makes such an emotional sort of journey in his mind. From the outset, how he presents himself, he's mean and menacing, but really on the inside, he's struggling. And he's struggling with the pull to the light and sort of his relationship with the Emperor and his feelings about Luke and all of that. So we get to see him struggling here when in the movies, he, up until the end, I guess, of episode 6, we kind of see him as this like unbreakable, unstoppable villain. And in the comics, he's not. And I think that's what makes him very interesting.
Yeah, I think something else. Yeah,
I remember a comment that I believe George Lucas made when we were in the prequel era. And he basically kind of said that this is, I mean, it's called the Skywalker saga for a reason. And those first 6 movies, it really wasn't about Luke but Anakin and as B Nasty, I think, said in the chat, the man within the man, within the man. I mean, there's a lot of conflict in this character, and it's really a fascinating story.
Yeah, absolutely. But, as they like to say in some mediums, less is more. And, I feel like with this mass amount of, as I said, Darth Vader comics in the last 5 years, we've gotten no less than 4 like specific series about him. Like, is less more? Do we feel like we're kind of cheapening Vader the more we get to see him? Is he as scary now as he was when 14 minutes of screen time he got in the first movie?
I don't think it's cheapening per se. I definitely think we need more of him. Everyone is always scared of him in the movies, but seeing what he's been doing in the past, 15 years of the timeline shows why he's such a menacing figure and why everyone is afraid of him. It's like thinking of I mentioned, I think it was my art of the week last week, was Dark Visions number 2 or 4, the one where the dude flies the ship through the space slug.
That
It's
was
like
number 2.
Yeah, there's a reason that people are going to these lengths to try and get away from him. How, he's a monster of a man or a machine or whatever. And I think it's building, Star Wars is modern mythology in a way. I think it's building on the mythology of Darth Vader and his stories and his quests throughout the galaxy. I think it's a story worth telling. And as long as we're getting good stories, I don't think it cheapens Darth Vader. I think, if you throw in throw in Charles Soule's Darth Vader, much as we love to talk about that, I don't think that's going to take away from the Darth Vader you saw in 1977.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like it's I personally find an emotionally unstable Vader, which is what we see in the comics, more scary than the like stoic, no emotions, no feelings, just a
Absolutely.
wrecking ball Vader. So, I think that, I want to see even more Vader. And I never thought I'd ever say that, honestly. I mean, I had all of these Vader comics waiting for me because I just put them off to the side. I was like, what could they do with Darth Vader? Boy, was I wrong. And like, they use him in such good ways to propel a story, but also I feel like I learn more about him after each time I read something with him in it. So that's always really great to see, I think.
Nice. So another thing is, Vader is kind of capitalized. He's the villain, like the capital V villain. Do we like? We've been doing anti-hero stories for a long time and villain stories. What about that? Do you think he is too evil to read a story? Like, he does some really bad things in these comics. Do you ever feel uncomfortable with all the like villainy going on here?
I feel more uncomfortable with how he's treated by Palpatine than with anything that he actually does himself. And maybe that's just because I know I've been with this character with Vader for however many years he's been around, but that's saying something when arguably the greatest villain in all of movie history, and I feel sorry for how he's being treated by and manipulated by somebody. That's saying something about a character and how the stories are being written.
That's true. And it's also kind of a good sort of counter, because we also have this mainline Star Wars series with Luke and Han and Leia, and let's face it, they're all goody two shoes. They all do the good thing and save the day and are heroic all the time. So it's kind of a nice change of pace, change of like flavor almost, to see Darth Vader come in and just destroy like primitive tribe after kingdom, just leaving just nothing in his wake.
Yeah, going back to what Tyler said about the Emperor, I think it's very similar to how the original trilogy came out, because you watch episode 4 and he's like, Darth Vader is the baddest dude ever and nothing could be worse than that. And then you watch Empire Strikes Back, it's like, whoa, there's a dude that Darth Vader answers to, and like a guy that's evil and worse than Darth Vader, and that's the Emperor. And seeing that, that personified in this comic books it's pretty great. And kind of reminds me of like a cycle of abuse kind of type story where Emperor Palpatine is awful to Vader and strengthens him in the dark side, and then Vader's awful to literally everyone else in the galaxy that's not named Luke Skywalker, but even then he's still sometimes pretty awful to Luke Skywalker. So yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting relationship that we see a lot more of. It adds weight, I think, to the throne room scene in the end of Return of the Jedi, seeing the interactions between those two.
Exactly. Yeah. From not to cheapen anything, but it's an abusive relationship, and Darth Vader just can't seem to get out of it.
Yeah, and I feel like that relationship almost makes him more evil. Like he's in such pain. It's like Anakin is in there somewhere and he's dying to get out. So that pain is forcing him to do evil things. And then on top of that, his, like you said, Caleb, frankly, abusive relationship between him and the Emperor also makes him do horrible things, because if he doesn't do these horrible things, then things with the Emperor are just going to get worse. And so I feel like that sort of adds on to his villainy and almost gives it like not an excuse, because it's still like horrible, the things he does, but it gives it a reasoning. And I think that's helpful to know the reasoning behind that.
Exactly. I mean, it's almost like this weird sort of thing where we see him try and struggle so hard to stay alive and keep living despite all the terrible things that are thrown at him, even though it might be easier for him to almost give up, but he always powers through and survives these things just so he can suffer more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So another little debate topic I put down here is we're talking about Darth Vader as a protagonist. It's not something we see him do too much, but like in the series, he is the right hand of the Emperor. He is in charge of the entire galaxy. Does that ever, do you think, lessen some of these plots of like, how does he going to get out of this one? Well, he has 10 million stormtroopers to throw at that problem. So how do you guys feel like writers have solved that? Do you feel like that's ever been an issue you guys were thinking about?
Honestly, no, because I feel like his relationship with the Emperor is so unstable that the Emperor could just pull the plug on those resources at any moment.
And he
has in the recent 2020 series. I remember like he was kind of out on his own, and the Emperor even sent someone to challenge him, Ochi Bestoon, and so I don't ever feel like he has too much on his side. At the same time, he is like a one-man wrecking machine. So while he does have these resources at his disposal, they could totally be taken away at any time.
Yeah, it's like seeing even, I think another great example of the resources being taken away is like basically the entire Vader 2015 series is him trying to claw back to be in the Emperor's good graces, basically building all these resources on his own. I mean, he does need them to a certain extent, but anytime he's going into an encounter, he's still the guy leading the charge. He's still the main physical force. There are just some things that you can't solve with a lightsaber, and that's where the resources of the Empire and the resources he builds with Dr. Aphra come in handy. But yeah, it's Darth Vader. I mean, what can he handle, honestly, at that point?
It's interesting you bring that up, because I haven't read that whole series all the way through yet. I'm only up to I haven't touched the Vader Down trade paperback, but that's the one I'm having the most issue with getting involved in and liking, and it's for that exact reason. Like this is Darth Vader here, and he's basically some errand boy who needs to be checked up on in this in this title, and it's not gelling with the Darth Vader that I know. And I mean, I do really enjoy Inspector Thanoth, who's in that, but I think that's why I haven't really enjoyed that comic as much as I enjoyed the Charles Soule, because Charles Soule writes him as he's lost in Charles Soule's book, but he's not without his power. He can still go through that fight to get his lightsaber back, and he can still use outdated and ancient technology like was pointed out in Darth Vader 2020 for his suit to be ultra powerful, and it's so interesting how many different ways that he has been shown in these comics to be brought down a little bit by Palpatine, whether it's the technology, whether it's the errands or whatever it is that make him so have to overcome something that really you'd think he'd be able to overcome.
Yeah. Like one thing that you mentioned that I want to bring up at the Charles Soule's thing is we didn't kind of see him be put in charge of the Inquisitors in 2017's Dark Lord of Sith, and for lack of a better term, it was kind of, I felt like Palpatine was kind of like giving his child, like, let's give you one toy and see how well you treat it before I get you. Oh, you chopped off all their limbs. Oh, okay. Like he was given in charge of the Inquisitors, and we definitely saw how badly he put his screws to them, essentially.
Yeah, going back to what Tyler said about all the obstacles that have to be thrown in front of the Vader, and I hadn't thought about this until now, but he's really kind of the bad guy equivalent of Superman storytelling, where throwing the big strong dude at Superman isn't a good story because they just punch each other forever, and Superman's gonna win. You have to throw non-physical threats at Superman to make it a good story. And that's the same thing with Darth Vader. I can't throw like a rebel army at him because he's gonna blow up all their grenades and kill them all in 1 second. You have to find other ways to challenge Vader as a character to tell a good story. And I think that's what a lot of the authors have done. Yeah, the 2015 series is about him trying to get back in the Emperor's good graces and working behind the scenes and trying to build an army of resources. And then the 2017 series is him finding his way in this new galaxy and struggling with his past. And the 2020 series is kind of a little bit of a blend of the two, honestly, in that way. So I think, yeah, it's like Superman. No one cared. Like, Doomsday is a crappy villain in all the ways that, like Lex Luthor is not.
That's a good point.
And because of the way we know how Vader's story ends, you can't introduce a Star Wars Doomsday, because he has to. We know how that story ends, and we know where he has to get to. So, yeah, you can kind of sort of bring up, different intellectual, adversaries, but somebody as big as a Doomsday, well, why didn't they make it into a novel? Why didn't they make it into a movie? Why didn't they make it in somewhere else? Why are we only learning about him now? So that's a really good point that you make, is that he's the Star Wars equivalent of Superman.
You've even had an entire arc about his Fortress of Solitude.
That's true.
That was a good arc. Now, another thing that Emma, I think, talked about a little earlier is it's hard. Like, Darth Vader's expression will never change because of the mask, but we still get some flashes of emotion from his countenance and all like that. It's hard. The whole point about media and books and movies and all like that is to feel human emotion. Meanwhile, the only thing we can get off of Vader is like fear, for him. Fear about him and like anger from him. Like, do we think that there's ever been an opportunity where it's like, his lack of expression has lessened some of these arcs here?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that there are other ways that the creators of the comics can get around that problem, using colors, for instance, to express emotions. It's kind of like C-3PO, right? Like, he's got to express a lot of emotions throughout the movies without changing his face. And that's why, Anthony Daniels had the special movements for him. And you could really tell his emotions just by the way that Anthony Daniels was moving. And I think it's similar to Vader. Like, you can tell by the way that he's holding himself, by the way that his head is tilted. You can really understand what he's going through at that moment, even if his we can't see his face moving around or his expression changing at all. I don't think it's held it back in the least bit. In fact, I think maybe even that element of mystery, like, okay, I kind of wonder if he's feeling anger here. Maybe he's not, though. Maybe he's like feeling another emotion. I feel like that mystery kind of adds on to the allure of these stories.
Yeah, I think
exactly. Just like this panel that showed up right here.
Exactly. Yeah, with the shadows. Yep.
Yeah, I think something that's like a hack that all Star Wars artists have been doing with Vader is if there's a moment that he has to feel emotion and you're trying to convey it, you have character B say a line, then a panel of Darth Vader just staring, and then a panel punched in of just his face and him saying a line. And then that is you just like, oh yeah, I can kind of infer what he's feeling. He paused there and his emotions, like, he has some sort of emotional reaction. If we're asking about Luke Skywalker, he's not just going to be like, let's go kill him. There's a time for him to think and reflect, and you kind of read between the lines and figure out what he's trying to think. And I feel like I've seen that visual setup used a lot between all of his different books.
Absolutely.
And there have been different ways that he does have a helmet, and his helmet looks the same, but I have noticed there are certain times when the angles are drawn just a bit different. The eyebrow of his helmet is a little bit more angular to give him a little bit more of a angry look, or maybe they're a little flatter to give him a more to give a little bit more of a softer look for times that it's needed. And there are very, very little subtle nuances that the artists have and colorists are able to put in there that can still deliver that little bit of emotion without completely changing the fact that his helmet is technically not able to emote anything.
Nice. Now, to move on to a new subject, something that we related to there. You talked about how we have Darth Vader says something and then our can't shove him. Then we go to like the B character, and that's one thing that's very consistent throughout all these Darth Vader arcs is he has some sort of B character, some sort of sidekick, and that's a classic sort of writing trope because Darth Vader is a practically silent protagonist. We will not see if he's alone in a scene and no one else to bounce off of him. We'd have no idea what's going on 9 times out of 10. So we need someone else to kind of guide along and talk out loud and talk about the plot essentially. And he's had a lot of those, and because they tend to die very, very quickly. So what are some of our favorite characters from the arcs, excluding Dr. Aphra? We can't do that. She was the best, but gotta move on. What about some of the other ones there?
Yeah, I mean, you give us a great list to pick from. I'm gonna go Z67. I think he's witty. It's the droid from the 27 or 2020 issue, I believe, the beginning of it.
He sucked. I hated him.
Oh,
he was the worst.
Oh wow.
He was the worst.
I thought he was
the
like
worst.
Wisecracking and funny and like a bit morose, like kind of like a bit of a toned down like 000 or HK-47 in a way. And I like I like the droids that you don't have to take too seriously. Like C-3PO can be a little bit of a drag for me sometimes. I know he's supposed to be the butt of the joke, but it doesn't always land for me. I like droids that are a little just more directly ridiculous at times. So I found him fun.
I thought Zed almost ruined that arc for me personally. I thought it was terrible.
Strong opinion over there.
Really? Yes. Really? Yeah. Emma, do you have a pick yet?
B Nasty's on Jacob's side. He says he loved him. He had no fear of Vader over there in the chat.
True. But that's because he's a droid, and droid lives are cheap.
So my pick is Inspector Thanoth, and the reason why is because he is just such an opposite of Vader. Like Vader is dark and broody, and Inspector Thanoth, he's kind of like proper. He's like the human version of C-3PO in my mind, like how I read him. And he kind of wants to, follow the rules. He thinks what Vader's doing is crazy. And I just love their rapport together. And something about him, like with his monocle and stuff like that. I don't know. I love his character.
One thing that Thanos was very, very like took a lot of pages from, and what I saw was Sherlock Holmes. He was like the galaxy Sherlock Holmes, and they paired with Vader, and that was such a great sort of thing of like seeing him slowly piece the things together behind Vader's back and like seeing like, ooh, this is a ticking time bomb. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, Thanoth was a really fun character. It was fun to see like Sherlock Holmes in space.
For sure.
Well, and what also added to Thanoth was his introduction coming right on the heels of another person in that role who was like overly critical. And now there was reasons why he was overly critical, so I'm not necessarily going to spoil that, but Vader couldn't, for lack of a better term, blink without him asking a question. And then to have Thanoth come on the heels of that and have the interactions that he did, I think adds to Thanos complimenting of Vader's personality in that story. Thanoth was actually going to be my pick, and I was like, you know what, just in case that somebody else goes with this, because I actually am going to select Darth Momin, because if going back to the Superman stories, if there was a doomsday like character, it I feel like that was a storyline that really portrayed that, where he was this all powerful Sith. I don't really think. I mean, he has a Darth name, so I guess. So,
yeah, he was.
So I guess
he was trained by a Sith anyway.
Yes, but that was just how they communicated And the irony of that the helmet to helmet and that whole story arc built around Vader's fortress that was such a memorable arc of that line for me.
Yeah. Now, Tyler, I would say I would agree, but I thought more that if we're talking Superman references, he's almost more like a Mr. Metroplex sort of thing, like almost more of a trickster sort of counter to Vader's direct brute force. They did have a drag out fight, which was cool, but like him trying to lead Vader on and deceive him into giving him more power.
I can definitely see the Mr. Plexic, one of my buddies who's a who is a huge Star Wars nerd. He our Superman nerd. He would be cursing me right now for not being able to pronounce that name. But yeah, I can totally see that manipulation and I'm doing this for you. I'm making you think this is something for you, but in reality, I'm getting the huge advantage here, and I'm waiting to spring my trap. Yeah. I love that analogy.
Yeah. I wrote down a couple other ones. This is not like a comprehensive list of what I have left. Like there's kind of two that stick out. Orichia Bastoon, that was a kind of a fun character to see like actual in comics. Now I felt like they downplayed him and like he became a little bit too much of a punching bag towards the end, which was again kind of like it's good to see Vader have like someone quaking in fear of him all the time, but I felt like his decline as the like story went on was a little much. And then another fun one was the ninth sister. He was with her for a couple of issues, and just seeing someone who's kind of not afraid of being chopped up by Vader because she already was chopped up by Vader, in the series, that was kind of like a fun someone willing to stand up and stare him in the eyes, as it were, and not really follow his orders because she knows she's just a little too valuable to force choke outright. So those would be my picks. I think would be the ninth sister.
Yeah, that's a good pick. All of that reminds I love the Rebels tie-ins in that arc, as well as tie-ins to Jedi Fallen Order too.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was so cool to see how the Inquisitorius was sort of built from the ground up, and I didn't realize before how much involvement Vader had in it. So that was a really cool thing to see in the comics.
Absolutely. So yeah, now that we've talked about some of our favorite characters, if we don't mind going into some spoiler territory, which were your favorite to see die? And I will go ahead and say this. Said 67's death was the greatest moment. Just like if you haven't read it, like well, for one, watching that character die was great, but for two, like the way he died, he was looking on as like, Padme kept in these recordings kept saying this person Obi-Wan, they must have been close, and just like that instant like seeing Vader like say take no shit on that was amazing. I love that.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even gonna lie to anyone. I don't remember any of these characters' deaths, so I'm just gonna leave it at that.
That's fine.
I did look one up to confirm what I thought, which was Ninth Sister's death, which happens in Jedi Fallen Order, which means I got to do it, which felt pretty cool. Because that was the fight that Cal had like at the top of the tree.
Oh, on Kashyyyk, yeah.
Kashyyyk. Well, I thought you chopped off her like arm or something, and she fell off the tree. Which we all know what that means.
She's probably still alive.
See her in the sequel.
Yeah, but you got to force her off the tree though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that counts. Yeah.
So I'm responsible for her assumed death. We'll go with that, which was pretty dope. So yeah, I'm going with that one.
I'm sticking with my man Darth moment because, like I said, what was the result of that, and having that full Sith power and having and everything that occurs there at Vader's castle, and then how he kind of the sort of finality to that story and to that arc, to that character really just kind of made gave just another one of the laundry list of badass moments that Vader had. That was still he's a great character, and he was a great adversary for Vader.
Absolutely.
I would actually like to amend my answer, and I totally didn't just look this up, not at all. I remember that Thanos' death was a little jarring, and now that I've looked it up, it all came back to me. So Thanoth was the one that told Vader where to find Dr. Aphra, and because Darth Vader wanted nobody to know about his association with Dr. Aphra, he just killed him.
And I think the tragic thing is like Thanos was like, yeah, I understand exactly why you're doing this, and I kind of agree. So this sucks.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't believe
and that's what I love about
smart.
his character. Like he just accepts it. He doesn't even care. Like he's like, yeah, no, I'd probably do the same if I were you.
Now, speaking of kind of jump boarding off of this one, I know we're kind of moving around a little quickly, but that is one thing that's kind of interesting, and we touched on a little bit. What is Darth Vader within the Empire? And we know he's the Dark Lord of the Sith, the Emperor's right hand, but it seems like everywhere he goes, like everyone's like, no one seems to consider him a superior officer. They just seem to be like, this is like the district manager, and he will fire you just for like looking at him wrong, sort of thing. It's like he's the head of the Empire, but he's not a part of it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would. He's above everybody else, kind of like. It reminds me of that clip from Battlefront 2 where like, the Inferno Squad sort of lands on Endor and they're like, we didn't ask for special forces or whatever, and they come in all like, confident in their abilities and stuff. And that's what it kind of reminds me of. Like Vader is above everybody else except for the Emperor. But at the same time, nobody kind of recognizes his authority until he gets all
or
threatening.
knows what he does, or
exactly. There's a lot of mystery surrounding him. Yeah, nobody knows, and everybody's terrified of him. But at the same time, it's like nobody sees him as their commanding officer. Like, you would think that this guy who could choke you through a Zoom call, you'd want to be a little scared of,
and they're all
and you'd want to listen to what he says. Yeah.
And he's almost like a counter to the Grand Moff Tarkin. Like, I feel like Tarkin is the sort of leader that the Empire needed to like oversee everything and be like the central point of the pyramid. Meanwhile, Darth Vader is just this like weird satellite that's orbiting around, like, blasting things that are sticking out too much.
Yeah, it's like,
well, and I also find it really interesting because the front linesmen of the Imperial machine are scared of him. But the brass, the General Tags, the Tarkins, the all the other upper echelon people almost kind of seemed annoyed by him and really do not respect him at all. It's a really interesting. We know how powerful he is, and we know that he just, especially with General Tag, you'd think that he'd be able to just force choke him to death. Realize that he needs to take this guy seriously, but I don't know if it's their military, their blindness and their military, selfishness, but they all seem to not only not respect him, but revel in constantly making him seem small.
That's one thing, like in the big boardroom scene in episode 4, like, where Vader's like just kind of stalking around and starts force choking that one guy who spoke out too much. And then Moff Tarkin like talks him down, like, stop it, Vader, don't actually kill him. But then after Tarkin dies, Vader, like throughout the rest of the future films, just keeps choking people out. So it seems like there was almost like a limiter there. Like Moff Tarkin was in there, so enough people like keeping an eye on Vader, like, don't go too far. But once that was taken out of the picture, suddenly Vader could be like, I have no consequences for my actions.
Yeah, I think part of that is it's part of that relationship comes from the fact that he is, all these military people have been trained to do things by the book, and Vader's just so outside of what their norm is, and he's able to take out a frontline stormtrooper because there are billions of frontline stormtroopers, but there's only so many generals and so many admirals in the fleet. So if you start messing with some of those, you're gonna have some long-term consequences. I think that's Vader is Palpatine's apprentice, and they're the two Sith, and it's it's a powerful dynamic in the galaxy. But I think Palpatine really has Vader's just another tool in his toolbox. He's got he's got Tarkin, he's got the Empire, he's got the fleet, he's got the Death Star. Got Thrawn, but all these are just different tools that he'll pull out one for whatever the situation calls for. Vader's not the person to keep control over the Outer Rim, but Tarkin is. And I think he's he's just a means to the end, honestly, for Palpatine and his visions.
Yeah, I just suddenly had the thought that, if Darth Vader like had seduced Luke and together they had ruled the galaxy as father and son, that empire would not have lasted. Darth Vader is not an emperor.
No,
Yeah,
But that's where Luke could have come in. I mean, we never know, and I'd love to have a what if, alternate universe sort of scenario where that occurs. But that you were absolutely right, is that his character cannot be the person at the apex of the pyramid, as using your analogy from earlier. So that would be a fascinating story to see.
So let me tell you guys about this great book called Dark Empire.
Where's our reference for the night?
I'm not me. Don't look at me.
I'm not
actually,
naked.
I actually do have one. Can I? Okay. Yep. So I was reading Shadows of the Empire, and they were talking, I kid you not, about naked Vader. And I'm not even making this up.
Really?
They were saying that he was like naked in his meditation chamber. How he survived, I have no idea. This was nuts. It was like they were trying to one up naked Palpatine. And honestly, I don't know which one came first. But, the joke will remain with Palpatine always.
And is this the novel or is this the comic?
This was the novel.
Yeah, I didn't see that. They didn't put that on art. They didn't ink that. Thank the Lord.
No, thank goodness, because I don't need to see it.
It's been 20 years since I've read that novel, but I do not remember that part of that part of the novel. So I'm going to be excited when I go back and reread that.
Yeah, I think Dark Empire came first because it was in the 91, 92 for Dark Empire, and
99.
Shadows of the Empire. Yeah, it was it's NC64 era, so it's like 96 at the earliest. So
nice.
Yeah, the novel came out in depending on when the publishing date is, but like mid 1996 into the beginning part of 1997. So,
okay. So since we're kind of on a fun topic here, I think I do a good amount of this, but whenever you're reading Darth Vader's dialogue, do you hear James Earl Jones?
As opposed to Hayden Christensen, or
do you when you're reading it, do you actually take the time to try to put James Earl Jones' dulcet tones into the dialogue there? I feel like I do that pretty often for some of his shorter ones, but sometimes some dialogue that he says when he's paragraphing itself out, sometimes it doesn't really flow terribly well.
I can see that. Yeah,
I feel like sometimes the people who are writing Vader, I'm not saying they're doing a bad job, but I don't think they are thinking in, how Vader would actually sound saying some of these things.
James Earl Jones's Vader is a man of few words, not paragraphs.
Exactly. And they stick to that mostly in the comics, but there are a few times where it's he strings two sentences together. I'm oh, he's talking too much. Absolutely. And one other thing before we move on to another section here is we've kind of talked about how much Vader has gotten screen time in these comics. I think he's definitely the one who's seen the biggest glow up as characters go in Star Wars. He was really good in the movies, but now he's even better because we expand so much more on him in the expanded universe. Is there any other character on that level, who's been so much more improved by their presence in comics and extended media in the the whole of Star Wars?
Caleb, I'm so disappointed in you. Absolutely there is, and his name is Lobot.
Lobot, yeah, that's Lobot a good one.
Lobot is nothing in the movie. He's a weird looking kind of creepy dude.
He doesn't even say the name.
Points at his wrist and does some stuff, and his head glows a few times, and it's kind of creepy and weird. And then Lando made me care about Lobot, which shouldn't have happened. So yes, there is someone better.
I stand corrected. Any other examples?
Yeah, I can't. No, I yield the floor to Jacob and his amazing counterpoint there.
Yeah, I mean, that is a great point, and I 100% agree. I could kind of make a case for Leia, I think.
That was
not that she not that she wasn't great in the movies, right? Like she was fantastic in the movies. But when I'm thinking about awesome characters that are like iconic in expanded universe material, like Vader is, like Boba Fett is, like I think of Leia immediately. She's kick-ass in the comics, and she has a very strong lineup of content in books. So I think I could probably make a case for Leia too, but she's already had like awesome content from movies, so I don't know if that disqualifies her.
Like
that's why I didn't mention her, is because she already had so much great character building in and a foundation from the movies. But I would 100% agree, as the character who has seen the most been most efficient with their extended screen time in the comics, I would definitely say is Leia.
Yeah, Leia definitely. I think like you see so many different facets of her. Like you definitely see her more adventurous side, going out on, individual adventures herself, but you also see her as like a leader and an organizer and like a promoter in this whole system. So you get a much better feel of that than you did in the movies. Not to get too far off topic, but it's almost like the more we see of Han Solo outside of comics, the worse and worse Han Solo gets. It's like, man, this guy's he's not really all that good at his job, is he?
Yeah, you definitely see how clumsy Han is in the comics for sure.
All right. So, let's start trying to land this plane here as we talk about, future opportunities here. Like I put some questions here, like, are there any sorts of stories we want to see Vader explore more in the future? Like, we've seen him like doing some like court drama and like Civil War stuff. We've seen him, stranded and alone, hunting down Jedi. Like, what are some areas that you'd like to see Darth Vader used at in future series?
Man, I would love to see a sort of buddy cop thing with Vader and with someone that maybe we wouldn't expect him to work with. Maybe like Boba Fett. Maybe they go on an adventure together or something like that, because it kind of seems like they have a little bit of animosity in The Empire Strikes Back, like no disintegrations. Like, yeah, there's a story there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they like go out together on this sort of mission to try to capture somebody, and it goes wrong and Boba Fett disintegrates him, and that's where the joke comes from. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking like a buddy cop thing where Vader's paired with someone that he really, really that is also evil or morally gray. And of course, I mean, I guess this has already kind of happened with Dr. Aphra, but I'm thinking in a sort of like one shot, like do a mission, get it done, and all sorts of wacky things ensue.
Nice. Yeah, that could be really fun.
I don't think we've seen this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to see a canonized version of what we got in The Force Unleashed, in that he is he has a confident lackey to do his bidding, that somebody like Aphra kind of is sort of behind the scenes and everything, but isn't as powerful. I would like to see something along those lines, to where maybe it's an apprentice, maybe it's just somebody who's raw, and he just takes care of their natural affinity for the Force to kind of do his bidding and things like that. But something like that's more that is canonized of that, to where he is, go do this for me and don't hold anything back.
Absolutely. Jacob, anything on your side?
So the quick and easy one is I definitely need something to follow up the last volume of Darth Vader 2020. I that needs to go somewhere for me. But the thing I really think I want, just like off the top of my head, is this would have to be like an Elseworlds type story. But I don't. Did any of you guys play the Revenge of the Sith like PS2 game?
Yes.
Yeah, it's like sitting somewhere on my shelf.
There's an alternate ending where Anakin kills Obi-Wan in the duel, and then goes and kills the Emperor, and then claims the galaxy as his own. So kind of like what you were saying, if Vader was the ruler, and it's super cool. I mean, it's yeah, that one. It's like, I mean, it's like just like nerdy stuff, like, but there's like
you could also do that in Lego Star Wars.
There's a concept art of his like Darth Vader armor, if he was not chopped to bits. And it's like basically it's more very samurai inspired. So I would love to see something like that, like a 4 or 6 issue miniseries of what the galaxy looks like under Vader. And I mean, there's even fewer Jedi to stop him at this point because Obi-Wan's gone. It's literally would just be Yoda and then all the other, B characters that survive. So I think that'd be kind of interesting to see where that goes. I agree. I don't think he has the political strength to hold the galaxy that strongly, but I'd be interested to see where that would go.
Yeah. This is going to sound really weird, but I think it'd be very interesting to see Darth Vader have an interaction or a story with Jar Jar Binks.
You gotta elaborate on that.
You gotta talk about like, you obviously can think of the comedic aspect, but also remember this was one of Anakin's like old friends. This is someone he met on his like first adventure out of his desert town of Tatooine, and someone that knew him and knew Padme. And like, how would he interact with someone like so clumsy and so like inept as Jar Jar Binks, but also like he would have to like survive that. Like you couldn't just kill Senator Binks like straight up. I think that'd be like a weird dynamic of like having him flash back to like his innocent youth, as it were.
Yeah.
So you want a whole title around that, or do you want a title that focuses on Jar Jar and then like runs into Darth Vader for like an issue or two?
Why not? We should have a Jar Jar mainline series. What's the worst that could happen there?
Oh boy. I think I'd have to delete Twitter.
Yeah, there's some interesting ideas flowing back and forth here. I could definitely get on board with like, a little side trip to see Jar Jar, for sure. Like, because Vader would have zero patience for him. But then again, I wonder if that would bring out, sometimes we see when Vader like sees something from his past, it kind of brings out like some emotions in him and like a sort of soft spot in a way. I wonder if Jar Jar would have that same effect.
Exactly. This was like one of his dear friends growing up, and like he didn't outright murder all the Amidalians in 2020. So
right.
Like maybe he would find like some form of like weird humor of being around Jar Jar again.
B Nasty's in the chat and says a post Vader immortal story of him going on a treasure hunt for a way to resurrect Padme. That's I would, you've got me intrigued there.
Ooh, kind of like a hunt for the Horcrux sort of thing. Get all the things together. Because the dark side is a pathway to many abilities some would consider unnatural.
I think.
Yeah,
that's a great. That's a great potential story there.
I mean, you get little flavors of that in the Vader's like the Dark Fort, whatever the Souls Vader Castle. Not Vader, but yeah, that
Tales from Vader's Castle. Yeah.
No, sorry, not that, but
the fourth arc
of 2017. The one where
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean,
the last arc with Darth Morden.
Momin, yeah.
Momin.
Darth Morden.
Somebody needs to Photoshop Morden into like a hood and with a red lightsaber.
Yeah,
I'll post
Fortress
it in,
Vader.
I'll post it in our Discord after the show. Give me like 20
Please
minutes.
do. I need it.
Fortress Vader. That's what I'm looking for.
Fortress Vader. Yeah,
get little hints of that in there, and I think the 2020, the first issue or the first arc of 2020 kind of explores his mentality of like putting that past to bed, more or less. I mean, I think he's not quite at peace, but he at least is more accepting of everything that went wrong in his place in life with Padme. But definitely, I think I there's definitely a cool story to go there. And obviously that would leave a very obvious or very easy way to bring in Dr. Aphra for that. And of course, we're never going to turn down Dr. Aphra content.
Absolutely not.
Precisely.
All right, so I think.
Well, I think what we've really, I think what we've really the main takeaway from tonight's show is, even though we've gotten as much Darth Vader as we have, there's still more that we can do, and there's still more that we want to see. So to answer the question that you asked at the beginning of the top of the conversation, Caleb, do we have too much? Absolutely not. And there's always more. We can always have more Vader because Vader's just awesome.
Mhm.
So so we have a couple of reminder. We have one reminder here, one little piece of news here for the show. Next week we are actually going to be going live 1 hour later, and that's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern time, and that is because our crossover event with Legends Look Back, we're getting in on the crossover event things ourselves, where we talk Star Wars Shadows of the Empire, will be next week with special guest Jared. So next week, instead of an 8 p.m. show, it will be a 9 p.m. show, and we will be discussing Shadows of the Empire. Fascinating title. You know, I'm reading more of it. I know, Emma, you talked about how much you're
reading it. You're reading
this
it.
Is yeah
That's
how much of
true,
an
yes.
experience this has been for you. So we encourage you all, and I was gonna say, Jacob, if you could pull up which you are already doing because you're an amazing producer, the comics so from our perspective, from the Cosmic Force perspective, the two comics that you want to read are Shadows of the Empire and Shadows of the Empire Evolution. Those are both available on Comixology and in the Marvel Unlimited app. I've checked those myself. One of them is six books. The other is 5 books. I don't remember which one is which, but it's not a huge undertaking. 11 stories or 11 books that you'll have to read if you want to be a part of the conversation next week. And we encourage you to do so because it's gonna be fun. There's a lot of things. Emma, I think Star Wars lore in the mid 90s is a lot different than what we have now, wouldn't you say?
It really is. And I think that the interesting thing about doing it, this crossover right now, is that it takes place at the same time and kind of the same general storyline as War of the Bounty Hunters. So it's been a very interesting and surreal experience to be reading that right now.
A lot of deja vu.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, and
yeah,
if you want
for sure.
If you want to pick those up, the links for those are in the description. I went ahead and linked the omnibus version, which also includes like a Mara Jade miniseries if you're into that, and I have links for both Amazon and Comixology, whatever you prefer. So you can go ahead and grab those and support the show a little bit.
So yes, Jared will be on our show next week, but also some of us are going to Legends Look Back the day after, right?
Yes, we are both crossing over.
Yes.
Perfect. So catch us live here and next week, Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Yes, support the show. Read up on some great, some legends content. I don't necessarily know if I want to use the word great until I finish reading all of that. And be sure to join us next week at 9:00 Eastern time, right here on YouTube. But until then, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Cosmic Force. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and right here on YouTube, so that way you can know when we are going live and when new shows drop in your podcast feeds. We go live normally every Wednesday night here at 8 p.m. on YouTube. If you like what you hear, please leave us a review on iTunes. It will help new listeners find the show, and we always appreciate all of the positive feedback and emotions you guys give us. We greatly appreciate that. Thank you from all of us. Be sure to visit Youtini.com for reviews, articles, and news for the entire expanded universe. We also encourage you to join our Youtini Discord community by going to Youtini.com/Discord. If you like to help support the show, you can find us on Patreon.com/Youtini and start receiving exclusive perks for starting at just $5 a month. We want to send a special shout out to Cheryl Bell, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sanders on our Jedi High Council, and Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command patron levels. Thank you for your continued and amazing support. You can tweet the show at Cosmic Force Show, or each of us hosts individually. I'm at Ty Rags, Emma is at Irma Jedi 26, Caleb is at Caleb Lamanek, and Jacob is at Jacob Bosch. Thank you again to all of my hosts, co-hosts here tonight. Thank you for all of you joining us in the chat tonight live. And thank you to all of you who are listening to us wherever and whenever you are listening. We truly appreciate everything that you do, and we look forward to having you join us again next week. But until then, may the Force be with you.